Imagine a dark sky, torn by a sudden flash, a thunder that reverberates like an ancient warning, a call that shakes the soul and forces us to stop, to reflect. It is 2025, a year that already heralds itself as a threshold, a boundary between what has been and what could be. I was in my small room a few weeks ago with a lit candle on the table and an old book of prophecies in my hands, when a piece of news cut through the silence like a gust of wind. Pope Francis is no longer among us. It was not an unexpected event, perhaps, for those who followed the signs, but it was a blow to the heart, a moment that pushed me to look beyond the surface of everyday life towards a larger, deeper, more spiritual horizon. Today I want to share with you not only what I have experienced, but what I have understood. The death of Pope Francis is not only the end of a pontificate, but could be the beginning of a change. Epochal, a fulfillment of prophecies that speak of the end of Rome's influence on the world, and a spiritual awakening that calls us all to respond. I speak to you as a witness, not as an expert. I am an ordinary person, with my frailties, my doubts, my hopes. A few years ago, in 2022, I embarked on a more intense journey of faith, driven by a sense of restlessness that I could not explain. I remember a winter night, under a starry sky, when I heard for the first time an inner voice telling me, "Prepare your heart, because the times are changing." I did not immediately understand those words, but as the months passed, I began to study the scriptures, to read the fathers of the church, to explore the prophecies of saints and visionaries who, throughout the centuries, have indicated a moment like this. And now, in 2025, with the news of the Pope's death, those words resonate stronger than ever. The prophecies I am talking about are not fantasies or superstitions, but messages that have crossed time, guarded by men and women of faith. Think of Saint Malachi, an Irish bishop of the 12th century, who in his famous Prophecy of the Popes listed 112 pontiffs, describing them with enigmatic mottos. According to many scholars, Pope Francis would be the last on this list, the Petrus Romanus, the one who will lead the Church in a time of tribulation, before Rome loses its central role in the world. I am not asking you to blindly believe these words, but to consider them with an open mind. Malachi wrote, "In the last persecution of the Holy Roman Church shall sit Peter the Roman, feeding his sheep in the midst of many tribulations. And when these are ended, the city of 7 hills shall be laid waste, and the fearful judge shall judge his people." Have we perhaps reached that moment? In 2025, with the death of Francis, it could be a sign that Rome's spiritual and temporal power is about to dissolve, opening the way to a new chapter in human history. It is not only Malachi who suggests this. Consider Blessed Catherine Emmerich, an 18th century German mystic, who in one of her visions saw a time when the Church would be almost destroyed, with Rome reduced to a shadow of its former self. She said, "I saw a great darkness descending on the city, and the Pope was alone, abandoned by many." These words struck me deeply when I read them a few months ago, because they seem to describe the climate of uncertainty we live in today. In 2025, the Church appears fragile, divided, tested by scandals, and by a world that seems to turn its back on it. The death of Pope Francis, a man who sought to bring light and mercy to a difficult time, may be the culmination of this crisis, the point at which Rome's influence breaks, like a clay pot falling to the ground. But what does all this mean for us? It is not just a question of history or theology. It is a personal call, an invitation to look inside ourselves, to ask ourselves who we are and what we are doing with our lives. I myself, in the silence of that night when I learned of the Pope's death, felt the need to pray, to seek a greater meaning. I invite you to join me in this prayer, which I composed with my heart, thinking of this crucial moment. Almighty Lord, you who know the beginning and the end of all things, guide us, your lost children, in this time of shadows and promises. Illuminate our steps, give us the courage to face the storms that are approaching, and let the death of your servant Francis be a seed of rebirth for the world. We entrust to you our fears, our hopes, our souls, so that we may be instruments of your will. Amen. If you feel in your heart to join in this invocation, I invite you to say with Me now, amen. May this word resonate as a commitment, a sign of our faith. When I think about what might happen after the death of Pope Francis, I can't help but imagine a different world. The prophecies speak of the end of Rome's influence, but not the end of faith. On the contrary, many visionaries, like those of Fatima, have predicted a time of purification followed by a spiritual awakening. In 2017, during the centenary of the apparitions, there was much discussion of the third secret, which some interpret as a reference to the fall of the institutional church and the birth of a more authentic faith, closer to the hearts of people. In 2025, this could mean a return to the roots of Christianity, a time when it will not be the walls of St. Peter's that define our faith, but the strength of our actions, the sincerity of our prayers. I will tell you about an episode in my life that made me reflect on all this. A few years ago, in 2023, I visited Rome for the first time. Walking among the ruins of the Forum and the majestic basilicas, I felt a strange sensation. That city, so rich in history and spirituality, seemed both alive and tired, as if it were carrying the weight of centuries on its shoulders. I prayed in St. Peter's Basilica, in front of the Apostles' tomb, and asked God to show me the truth. Returning home, I began to study, to look for answers. And now in 2025, with the death of Francis, I wonder if that trip was a preparation for this moment, an invitation to bear witness to what is happening. Don't get me wrong, I'm not predicting the end of the world. Prophecies are not judgments, but warnings, signals that push us to change. The end of Rome's influence could be an opportunity, not a condemnation. Think about it. For centuries, the Church has guided the Western world, shaped culture, morality, politics. But today, in 2025, we live in an era of crisis. Wars, natural disasters, deep divisions. Perhaps the death of Pope Francis is an invitation to look beyond institutions, to seek God not in palaces, but in our hearts, in our communities, in the little things of everyday life. It is a message of transformation, a call to become living witnesses of faith. I invite you to reflect on this with me. Imagine a world where faith does not depend on a city or a throne, but on our ability to love, to forgive, to build bridges. In 2025, this could be our task, to take up the baton left by Francis and carry it forward, not as passive followers, but as builders of a better future. If these words resonate with you, if you feel that there is some truth in what I am saying, then I ask you to take a step forward. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, where we will continue this dialogue, where I will share other thoughts, other reflections on this extraordinary time. Together, we can seek the light in the midst of the shadows. And so as 2025 unfolds before us, I leave you with a thought of hope. The death of Pope Francis is not the end, but a beginning. It is a call to wake up, to prepare, to live our faith fully. May we be worthy of this moment. May we respond with courage and love. Rome's story may be coming to an end, but God's story in our hearts has only just begun. Be blessed, now and always.